Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again, back with another relationship drama story. In this video, my uncle demands I give him my supercar. Instead, I ended up cutting ties with my family. Here is what happened, let's dive right into the video. So I own a very successful wedding photo and video business, and living near a city means that pretty much every weekend is booked solid for multiple events. I have a great staff, and at this point my end of the job is more planning and making the deals rather than going to the venues and actually doing any of the photo work. One couple that I worked with, their husband-to-be is a foreign car salesman. I was also into cool cars and he told me to come down to the dealership and he would show me something real cool. I did go down and what he showed me was a 2022 Lamborghini Aventador and I fell in love with it. Buying a car for $500,000 might seem crazy to some people, but for me it felt like I needed this car. I really don't buy myself nice things and I live frugal, so I had a good savings for something nice. And yeah guys, that's certainly not something you hear from many frugal people, that they intend to buy a Lamborghini. Anyway, after I got the car and started posting about it on my Instagram, my uncle caught wind of it and ended up coming over to my house. This was strange because my relationship with my family is extremely strained and I did not even realize that I still had him on Instagram, as most of the family blocked me from social media once and I basically got disowned. To make a long story short, I knew I was gay when I was 15 and the rest of my family didn't approve of my choice, as they put it. They did not kick me out since they didn't want to get in trouble throwing out a minor, but I was the black sheep of the family pretty much. I was ignored and insulted until I was old enough to be told to leave. As it stands, I basically did not have a family anymore, so seeing one of them show up was very odd. I figured that if he was there, something horrible happened, like my mom or dad died, and he wanted to tell me. Instead though, he started circling the car and making noises about how good it looked, giving off a strange vibe. Finally, he said what he was thinking and I wished that he had never shown up to my house. Uncle said, "This is a nice car and it really needs somebody older and more experienced to take care of it." Me, "I know how to take care of my car, don't worry." Uncle, "I deserve a Lamborghini though. I worked hard all of my life and did what I was supposed to. You, on the other hand, take little pictures and don't really deserve something like this. Plus, this is a real man's car and well, it would be wasted on you." Me, "If you came to insult me and demand my car, you can turn around right now and walk off my property. You all made it clear that you didn't want me around and now that I have money, you think that you're entitled to a slice, huh? Well, you're not." Uncle, "After all that we did for you." Me, "You mean making me feel alone since I was a teenager and then dumping me like everybody else once I turned 18? You're not getting anything and I'm not falling for your fake sweet talk." He then got mad and left, but this really got me angry with the entitlement and the things that he said, especially calling my job and passion just taking little pictures. If my family cared at all about me, they would have known that I went and took nature photos in my spare time and submitted them to professional magazines, on top of being in charge of my business and making bank doing so. Telling him to leave was not enough though, as I was getting messages and threats from him in order to get my car. He told other members of my family lies that it was meant to be his car and I managed to swindle it out from under his nose. His birthday was coming up and I knew that if I wanted to end this harassment I had to do something decisive. I'd always suspected my uncle's business practices were shady, so I decided to do some digging. Over the next few weeks I hired a private investigator to look into my uncle's finances and business dealings, and what they uncovered was shocking. Years of tax evasion and fraudulent accounting practices. Armed with this information, I contacted the IRS and provided them with all the evidence. I also reached out to a lawyer to ensure I was protected from any potential backlash. On the day before my uncle's birthday, federal agents raided his home and business. The news spread quickly through the family and suddenly all the harassing messages stopped. I later learned that my uncle was arrested and charged with multiple counts of tax evasion and fraud. The family was in chaos, with many of them potentially implicated in his schemes. As for me though, I kept my Lamborghini and continued to grow my successful business. I used some of my profits to donate to charities supporting underprivileged youth, just like I was. The experience reinforced my decision to remain no contact with my family. I realized that I'd built a better life for myself without them, surrounded by supportive friends and colleagues who accepted me for who I am. In the end, my uncle's greed and the family's entitlement led to their downfall, while I continued to thrive. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, when I first started reading this story, I thought OP might be a douchebag because it almost sounded like he's bragging about the Lamborghini, but then I was really positively surprised about the ending, where he donated to a charity and went no contact with the awful family. Props to OP, that was awesome. The next one is an amazing malicious compliance story. So I worked as a care staff for a private company of 250-ish employees that deals with special needs individuals, mental disabilities and often physical ones. We have day hab facilities and group homes. In a prior job I did the same for the state, but was moved to an IT role after a while until the stupid from upper management became too great. A whole other story. Before any of that though, I was an EMT, and before that I was in the army and I know how to cover my own ass. Backstory complete. My boss sent out an email to all staff and had an in-person company meeting because I put on a form the estate inspectors look at that said, "Client returned from day trip sunburned, disoriented and dehydrated." Staff with the client reported they passed out. Apparent heat exhaustion. Reported to RN and state authority for possible neglect. So apparently the RN never looked at the report before the state auditors came in a week later, although she did look at the client and agreed with me about the heat exhaustion the next day when she was back in the office from a day off. Fast forward 9 days and we have an emergency company meeting. Boss hands out a paper specifically telling every staff they are not to do anything outside the scope of their job description, and they are not doctors, while staring at me the whole time. She calls me out specifically during the meeting by name. Alright, fine, I stopped doing anything but the exact wording of my original hiring duties. 2 months pass. One day I get a call about a problem with the computers at the main office in San Antonio. My job is over an hour away. I had traditionally done all the IT troubleshooting, as I was one for the first hires of the company and I had a background for it. Boss calls me on my day off and asks me to drive to the main office and fix their computer system. I said to her, "I cannot do anything outside of my listed duties, per your order." Then I hung up and turned the phone off until dinner. After I turned the phone back on, I get a call within 10 minutes from the company owner. He, who had been nothing but nice to me up until now, just bluntly asks, "When I felt like doing my job and getting things working, but especially payroll, don't I want to get paid tomorrow? Get your ass in gear, son." That may indeed have been the wrong way to start the conversation with someone who wasn't being paid extra for their IT problems. I referred to him to the email and in-person letter boss had put out, and then I pointed out how company policy had a no firearms rule, but he specifically always carried a 1911 to all company meetings and events on his right hip, calling it out by model as a Kimber 4. I then politely advised him to find a way to deal with his own problems, as the computers being bricked was not one of mine, but paying employees such as me was one of his, per state and federal law, and then hung up. Turned my phone off again until I was at work 2 days later, and in that time apparently 3 staff had quit from failing to be paid, 18 more were threatening to, and the owner had driven over to have a chat with the boss and myself. They laid out that as a senior care staff, my job role had expanded over the years, as I was there 5 at that point, and I countered that the pay had not at all since I had been hired. Me doing IT work was a charity from me, not a job requirement, and I appreciated none of the disrespect I had gotten lately from either of them. I also pointed out that I knew full well that a contract IT company would cost them at least hundreds, if not thousands for a consult, and at least $200 an hour, and if I deemed to fix their problem it would take about 3 hours. The owner offered me a 50-cent raise and 3 hours overtime. I countered with a public apology in front of all staff from boss, a $3 per hour raise and an exemption from the no-carry firearm policy he was being hypocritical about. They said no, so I said, "I'll be back with the clients doing my job duties and let me know when they contacted an IT company and changed their minds." Keep in mind that all the computer systems were effectively bricked at this point, so the nurses cannot do any charting, no one can build time for casework, the state paperwork, while largely paper, cannot be sent, and well, it took them 4 days, who knows how many calls to computer specialists for quotes, and another 8 quitting employees to agree to my conditions. After 4 tries to get me to let go of the concealed carry one, that was their sticking point. And by the way, I don't carry a gun at work and never have, even though in my state it's totally legal, but it bugged me the absolute hypocrisy of the owner, so I would have given up the race before that. In the end, it turns out that the owner's wife deleted something she shouldn't have had access to, and it took all of 8 minutes to restore them from backups I personally had on an old hard drive I was not using that the company said were an unnecessary cost. And the next one is titled Customer Threw a Lobster at Me. And this one is from r/Tales from Retail. So I used to work retail at a mom and pop costume store. It was the Saturday before Halloween and I was working the register closest to the door, which meant that I was handling returns and exchanges. Like most costume stores, all sales were final at our store. That being said though, we did try our best to accommodate customers and would exchange sizes or issue refunds for customers with manufacturer defects. We would also do repairs on items that were just crappily made. About 30 minutes into the shift, while I'm still fresh luckily, this woman came in for a return and is told by the greeter that I can help her with it. She walks up to my register, completely ignoring the fact that I'm in the middle of checking someone else out, and starts to tell me that she needs to do a return. I stop her and tell her that I heard her conversation with the greeter, but she will have to wait until I am done with my current transaction. She rolled her eyes at me, but then stepped aside. Once I was done, she hands me a dog lobster costume and tells me that she needs to return it. I ask if she has the receipt and why she is returning it. She says she does not have the receipt and that it was too small for her dog. And by the way, I want that costume for Disney, not gonna lie. Anyway, I explained to her that all sales are final, but if she wants to exchange the size, we can try. She starts to try and argue, but I stop her and tell her before we can do anything, I need to look up her receipt. The best way to go about that is scan the item and look up the sales history. When I go to do that, nothing came up. I then try a keyword search, nothing though. Check the item list for the manufacturer, nope. I ask the woman if she is sure she got it at our store because as far as I can tell, we don't even sell it. She then starts shrieking and cursing that of course she is sure. I ask her if she's got her credit card app on her phone and can show me the transaction on her end that might help me find it. She continues to shriek at me and refuses. She then points to a generic price sticker on the front and tells me that that is our store's price sticker. I pick up another item and show her what our store's price sticker actually looks like. At this point, she is literally turning red and cussing up a storm. She demands to see a manager, however, our owner was standing at the register next to me the whole time. He says that he's been listening in and that there's nothing else we can do for her unless we can track down some record of the purchase. She then shrieks and cusses even more and goes to storm out of the store, but right as she reaches the door, she turns around and lobs the costume at me. I duck sideways and it misses. I call after her to have a good day. The owner asks me if I'm okay, to which I shrugged and said sure. I picked up the costume, tossed it in our lost and found, and then continued on with my day. The next customer I checked out complimented me on my reflexes. At the end of Halloween we would always have a little party and our owner would get us a cake. That year one of my co-workers, who was also an artist, drew a cartoon of Lobster Lady to put on the cake so that we could all devour her. A few weeks after Halloween, when we were going through the lost and found, I picked up the costume and asked our owner what I should do with it, since no one had ever returned for it. He shrugged and told me to keep it because I had earned it. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, you need to have nerves of steel to be working in retail. That's for sure. Props to everyone who can do this. The next one is a malicious compliance story. Years ago, I worked as an assistant manager for a retail store in art supplies. My store was in a fairly affluent area and we got lots of bored housewives who would drop $500 because they wanted a hobby. So one year, the company offered a one-day only coupon for Black Friday. The store was swamped. Saturday was swamped, Sunday was swamped. I'm running a register and trying to get people through as rapidly as I can when she arrives. We will call her Debbie, D. Debbie, throwing 3 bags full of merchandise on my counter. I want to return all of this stuff and rebuy it. Me, okay, can I ask why? People sometimes did this because they had used the wrong payment method or something, but I needed to verify. D. I bought all of this stuff on Friday at store 1,500 miles away and their tax rate is higher, so I want to return all of it and buy it here to pay lower taxes. And now hurry up, I've been driving all day and I'm tired. This is gonna be a pain on a very busy day over what comes out to about $2.50. I confirm with the other manager, who agrees that this is ridiculous, but we just need to do it. So I start her return, but the totals don't match up, so I have to call and talk to the on-call support rep. He tells me that I can only refund my state's tax and not the other amount. The solution is to manually adjust prices until the tax and totals match. As I'm doing this, Debbie is complaining about how she is tired from driving, I'm taking too long, her dog, her feet, her back, whatever. But eventually, I get everything balanced and process her return. Okay, the return has been processed. It's about time. You'd be done already if you weren't so stupid. Now I want to buy it all again. Cue malicious compliance part 1. The thing about art supplies is that they can be small and in multitudes, and that's what she had purchased. Individual pencils, brushes, pastels, sheets of paper, etc. Sure thing, ma'am, but I want to be absolutely certain that I ring everything up right, since I'm dumb, you know? So, with a sweet smile, I take everything out of the bags and ring them up one by one again. Of course, some stuff does not scan, so it has to be looked up. As I go along, she's getting more and more agitated, the insults get more frequent, and now everyone in the other lines are glaring at her. At last, everything is rung up, and I give her the total. Cue malicious compliance part 2. Remember that coupon from the beginning of the story? Well, the code has been pulled from the system, so her new total with the reduced tax rate is significantly higher than the old one. Debbie loses it and starts screeching. It's not even words at this point, only noise. Sorry ma'am, but it looks like you used our exclusive coupon on Friday. Unfortunately, that coupon is no longer valid. Your new total will be X amount of total. She kept screaming but eventually paid, snatched her items and left. It was a good day to be retail. And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you've ever worked in retail and had to deal with Karens like this, then please feel free to share your own story either in the comments or on r/ripestories on Reddit, where you can post full-length stories without issues. Either way, the next story is titled Complying with Everything. Years ago, I was a cook at a well-known fast casual restaurant known for their large burritos and charging extra for guacamole. I worked hard because the place was very understaffed given the number of customers that came in. Management was understanding when we had to cut corners to make sure people didn't wait for food. One of the rules we had to follow before cooking the rice was to rinse the raw rice 3 times until the water runs clear. Vague? I know. How clear is clear? What if after 3 rinses the water is not clear? 3 times and runs clear, or 3 times or runs clear? Who knows? I didn't ask. Most of the time we would give the rice 1 or 2 rinses before throwing it into the cooker. Never had any problems with customers complaining about it, and we never ran out of rice. Since there were never any problems, management didn't care. Everyone was happy, that is, until one day Miss Manager decides it's time to enforce every single rule exactly. Not sure why. To get to the position she was in, she knew how to do all the individual tasks in the kitchen, so she knew the rules. However, she did not know how to conduct the symphony of the dozens of simultaneous tasks at the speed and accuracy required to keep customers moving and to never burn anything. I, on the other hand, did. She did not know which corners were okay to cut and which ones were not. But I did, as I was getting ready for the busy shift, but the kitchen was not in busy mode yet. So here I am, rinsing rice, and Miss Manager approaches me. Make sure to rinse the rice until the water runs clear. I look at her and respond, I always do. She knew I was lying, but she knew why. She knew that it would take longer to make the rice, but I was the only person who could make sure that rice never runs out. Her life would be hell if we ran out of rice. She had a chance to let it go, she didn't though, so Mr. Cook, I know you don't follow that rule. Keep rinsing the rice until the water runs clear, and before you put this rice on the cooker, come find me and show me that it runs clear. I looked at her with a straight face and replied, keep rinsing the rice until the water runs clear? Got it. I begin, I fill the pot of rice with water, agitate the rice, pull out the perforated part of the pot and dump out all of the cloudy water. After 3 times the water still resembles water skim milk, I look up and she is watching me. She asks, does that water look clear to you? It was a rhetorical question. I see how it is, I start rinsing again. Satisfied she walks away, I continue repeating the process. A while goes by and yes, I'm counting the number of times. The long grains of rice are breaking apart and the entire pot is turning into a strange mushy mixture of white rice. Given the time I'm taking on this dumb task, everything else that needs to get started in the kitchen is falling behind. Finally, Miss Manager appears in the kitchen again. You're still rinsing rice? The timing was perfect. I dump out the water in front of her and ask her, does that water look clear to you? As I dump out the precursor to slightly watered horchata, she softly says, no. I step away from the sink. How many times do you think I've rinsed this rice? I ask. 7, she answers. No, 37. I wasn't joking. I have rinsed this rice 37 times and the water is not running clear to your satisfaction. Should I continue? She looks at the rice, knows it is unusable, that she has lost the fight. On one hand, she cannot tell me to keep cooking because the ground up rice was only a few rinses and a cook away from becoming grits. On the other hand, she cannot tell me to stop rinsing because then she would be in violation of the sacred rice rinsing commandment. Additionally, she cannot fire me, otherwise the store could not open. She scheduled me to work the entire day and she sure knows that she couldn't do what I do in the kitchen. Fine, she relents. Get back in there and make sure we are ready when it's time to open. I laughed to myself as I went back to work. I win. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, having to work together with such a boss would make me absolutely crazy. Let me tell you, being self-employed is really a godsend. Anyway, the next one is a story from r/Am I the Jerk, and it is titled, Am I Really in the Wrong? Just recently, my husband, 31, was promoted to assistant manager of the warehouse. We both work on the ups of 50 hours a week. I am shift manager at a behavioral disorders facility. Both jobs are very hands-on and strenuous. Since his promotion, he has developed an entirely different attitude. Extremely entitled and, dare I say, rude as all F. He's always boasting and bragging. This has been going on for 3 weeks. So some examples are as followed. On his days off, he wants the house to be radio silent. If our 4-year-old wants to play, he tells her to stick to her bedroom because he needs peace and quiet after working so hard. If I make our daughter lunch, he will immediately say, "Where's mine?" He asks me to grab him things damn near constant all hours of the night. He expects nightly back rubs, but if I ask, he will scoff at me and say, "I worked all day," even if I had as well. He expects meals that he likes made every night, regardless if me or our daughter like the meal or not. He also now acts like he has full say over the money because he makes more. Last night was the tip of the iceberg for me. Before this, I let a lot of crap slide because it was a recent promotion and hell, he is excited, so I get it. But last night around like 11 PM, I was in bed scrolling through my phone and he comes into the bedroom, lays down and says, "Babe, you should go make me some ice cream. I want the chocolate drizzle on it. Oh, and don't forget the cashews." And then he starts scrolling through his phone. I ignore it because I feel at this point I was gonna snap. He then shook my leg and said, "Did you hear me?" So I responded with, "Yeah, I did hear you, and no, go make it yourself. You are literally just out there. Your sense of entitlement is way out of line. Do something for yourself." He became offended and instantly like effing clockwork said, "But I worked all day." So I snapped back with, "Yeah, I did too. In fact, I worked 12 hours to your 8. Like I said, do crap for yourself." He is now saying that he is not acting entitled and that I was just taking my bad day out on him and that everything I said makes him feel unappreciated. Am I the jerk here? Did I push it too far? And Ripe Stars, let me know in the comments what you think about this. Do you think that OP was the a-hole or not? And personally, I would say OP is definitely not the a-hole. Her husband acts mega entitled and he seems to have no empathy for her as well, because clearly she is just working as hard as him. Anyway, a comment on Reddit said, "Not the a-hole, someone needs to knock your husband off his high horse. You two need to have a serious talk at home that you're equals and he is not the boss. Hell, if he's treating employees like this, then things won't go well at work either. Husband and I work an equal amount of hours, so we split the chores and take turns cooking. It sounds like he needs to pitch in too." Comment number 2, not the a-hole, and if that's how your husband is acting at work, his stint as an assistant manager will be a short-lived one. For the sake of his career, he needs to learn the difference between being a boss and being a leader. And yeah guys, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on all major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple or Google Podcasts. Furthermore, you can find bonus content by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or by clicking the join button here on YouTube. For a small monthly fee, you will get access to dozens and dozens of exclusive videos you won't find anywhere else. Thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you again tomorrow.